What's going on, guys? It's the Tutor here. As some of you may know, 2026 is fast approaching, and we have Magic the Gathering information. Uh, just recently, Lorwyn Eclipsed was just announced, and the caption is Return to the Land of Light and Shadow. Dare to enter the ever-changing plane of Lorwyn and Shadowmoor and discover your true self. Releasing January 23rd, 2026. If you guys are interested in updates for Lorwyn Eclipse, like new cards, stuff like that, I would go to magicwizards.com and find this page and enter your email and then fill in the following prompts. So this seems like a very fun set. I don't know much about Lorwyn or Shadowmoor or any of this stuff, but I thought it'd be fun to make a quick video and talk to you more about the lore uh, of Lorwyn and kind of get you prepared because this is a very classic set and I thought it'd be fun to go through it. All right, so I've made this fancy presentation here, and here's the same image you guys just saw, released January 23rd, 2026. So let's talk about the release and set details. Like I said, this is an older set. It is the very first set in the Lorwyn block. It is a 43rd Magic expansion total and was released back in 2007, specifically on October 12th. And the pre-release was late September. Lorwyn contained 301 cards and 80 rares, 80 uncommons, 121 commons, and 20 basic lands. It is the first set of a so-called mini-block, the second being Morningtide. This would be followed by a second mini-block, Shadowmoor Eventide. Together they formed a mega-block to suit Wizards' 4 sets-a-year trend. Lorwyn was tribal-themed, but approached that theme in a way different from how Onslaught Block had. Lorwyn introduced Planeswalkers, which was very cool for me to learn that information, as an entirely new card type in the main game. Apart from some of the Planeswalkers, there are no humans in this tribal block. The world of Lorwyn is steeped in a more traditional fantasy than the previous blocks. The expansion symbol of Lorwyn is alternatively interpreted as an elven ear or a leaf. And this kind of goes back to the image here of Lorwyn. You have like this druid-looking elf guy with horns. Pan, if you guys remember that from Greek mythology, kind of reminds me of that in a sense. So here's the Lorwyn expansion symbol. As you guys can see, it looks like an elfie or kind of a leaf, whatever you want to interpret it as. But I think this is a very cool symbol for the expansion. So, what was the inspiration for this set? Well, for inspiration, the creative team turned to Celtic folklore and mythology. There are influences from Irish, English, Welsh, Scottish, and Celtic stories, languages, and cultures in both the look and world detailing of the setting. And I always liked the Celtic mythology. I really do like Cuchulainn. I like Skahag. I like Cuchulainn's weapon, Gaelbolg. Is just really cool. And all the specific weapons. I think Caldebold is also one of them too. And there's a lot of really cool lore in this. So I hope we see more of that in this new expansion coming out in 2026. So let's start with Lorwyn and Shadowmoor flavor and storyline. So Lorwyn and Shadowmoor is a remote plane with two aspects. While Lorwyn represents day, Shadowmoor is night. This image here is, of course, showing off Shadowmoor. Lorwyn switched to Shadowmoor every 300 years in an unnatural event triggered by the Great Aurora. Lorwyn Shadowmoor does not stand out in the blind eternities. It resides in a region of dream and aether that obscures it from most planeswalkers. It is also one of the few known planes in the multiverse where humanity has not flourished. The plane is considered to be spark blind. So as you guys just saw or seen and heard, I mentioned Great Aurora. Now, what is the Great Aurora? The Great Aurora was an event that changed the plane of Lorwyn. It is a dark and twisted counterpart, Shadowmoor, and vice versa. Each great aurora was caused by Una through her lengthening of the normal days and nights of Lorwyn to last for centuries at a time. The great aurora depicted in the Lorwyn Shadowmoor block novels occurring sooner than Ona intended to as a result of the Great Mending. As a precaution, Ona killed the elf Marlin to duplicate her to house her memories. Una did this because she was afraid that early aurora would affect her like the rest of the plane because she had not caused it. This event ended with Ona's defeat at the hands of Marlin and her companions. As you guys can kind of see in this image over here, it looks like kind of like the Aurora Borealis in a sense, but with like different colors. Down here we have Lorwyn, and then up here we have Shadowmoor, kind of. So this is just a kind of a brief lore about the Great Aurora and the the change between Lorwyn and Shadowmoor, which seems to be a very common theme, where it says the ever-changing plane of Lorwyn and Shadowmoor. Whether that means maybe the change is happening more often due to lore reasons, not sure, but that is why the plane, or it's kind of changing from Lorwyn to Shadowmoor. So this is Una right here. Una is the queen and mother of the fairies on Lorwyn. She lives in Glen Elendra and sees the world through her children and the harvested dream stuff they bring her. She is one of the few creatures that retained her memories after the Great Aurora and was in fact the source of all previous auroras. Her children refer to her as the mother of all fae or Great Mother. Una is a sort of fairy composed of the essence of the fae and the source of the race on Lorwyn. Comprising the essence of a fairy fertility, she is composed of thousands and thousands of petals, forever budding tiny insects like fairy children off into the air around her, hovering in Glen Elandra for all to pollinate with stolen dream stuff. Una has never been seen outside Glen Elandra and is believed by many of the races of Lorwyn to be strictly mythical. And as you can see, she is blue-black. So I talked a little bit more about the lore, but let's talk about Lorwyn specifically. And this video is focusing on the Lorwyn aspect and not Shadowmoor. That will be in a different part. Lorwyn flavor and storyline. Lorwyn is a world where nature thrives in its most pristine state, as we kind of saw from the images before. The sun never drops below the horizon, and midsummer never ends. The creatures of fable who dwell there know nothing of gloom or malice, but they are consumed with rivalry. Lorwyn is one of the two aspects of the plane Lorwyn Shadowmoor in the setting of the Lorwyn block. The plane is small, temperate, and believed to be flat. The known portion of the plane, referred to as the Blessed Nation by the elves, is heavily forested and ringed by high mountains, outside of which lays the mysterious primal beyond. The world has no oceans or large lakes. All of its water comes from a system of rivers and streams connected by the subterranean dark meanders. And over here we have the book, I believe, and then the logo of the book, which looks really cool and kind of showcases this creature right here. Continued. Lorwyn exists in a perpetual midsummer and eternal daytime until, obviously, it's interrupted and Shadowmoor comes. Through its citizens still operate on a daily cycle. The plane observes dawn, noon, and dusk with no night, with its day beginning when the sun grazes the eastern horizons and ends as it grazes the western. Currency on Lorwyn is composed of threads of precious metal and denominations, sorry about that, of copper, silver, and gold grouped in size into threads, ropes, and coils. So obviously, with such a great, kind of floral and just kind of mythical, lovely scenery, you're gonna have plenty of creatures and flora. The indigenous wildlife of the Lorwyn is dominated by 8 sapient races: elves, kithkin, marrows, flamekin, and boggots, treefolk, giants, and fairies. Lorwyn is one of the few known places in the multiverse where humans do not occur naturally. Keyword being naturally. In addition, Lorwyn supports a meandering of animals and supernatural life, including wisents, springjacks, servants, a semi-sapient race of mimics known as changelings, and the majestic greater elementals. All of them thrive in Lorwyn's temperate environment and unending growing season, preserving the plane's character as unspoiled natural wilderness. Each of the 9 races, including the changelings, known as the tribes, live in an uneasy state of peace. Skirmishes and small battles occur from time to time, but full-scale war is unknown. The tribes are highly political and distrustful of those outside their race. All are wary of the cruel and powerful elves who functions as the plane's de facto rulers. So this is quite a lot, but let's go through it slowly but surely. Lorwyn is a backwater world rarely visited by planeswalkers. Those who know of its existence regard it as an idyllic paradise. Late in Lorwyn's history, the barriers between the tribes began to break down as individuals from different races come together into new tribes based on common goals, specifically like soldiers, wizards, and so on and so forth. So humanoids, we have boggarts, changelings, elementals, and then there's different elementals like the flamekin and the greater elementals, and of course we have like the elves, fae, giants, so on and so forth. Then we have normal wildlife, like crawfish, goats, wolves, snakes, so on. And then over here we have just some flora. Not too much to really say, but as you can see from the images I've shared, you kind of get the idea of what the flora is like in Lorwyn. So I thought it'd be fun just to show you some pictures. These guys are the Lorwyn Bogarts, Marrow, and then the Flamekin, Elemental, and so on and so forth. I think these are like goblin-looking things. I'm not sure what Bogarts are in lore, but they appear to be some sort of just standard, typical mob-looking things. Let me know if you guys know more about these guys and what their lore implicates, because I'm curious to know down in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. So let's talk about the lore and locations. With this lore being so heavy, we have quite a few locations and key locations. Here on the left is just a couple of locations, and on the right, of course. Looking at the picture on the left, we have the Murmuring Bosque. It looks like a lot really dusky, but as we talked about before, I mean, it kind of ends at dusk, but then starts back over again. But it never becomes nighttime. So that's kind of what this image I think depicts, and this is the Murmuring Bosque. And then we have Glen Alondra, as you can see with the flora, just a beautiful kind of scenery. There's some fairies up here and a nice, beautiful, pristine river. Kind of not impacted, of course, by humans or anything else, as stated, because humans don't occur there naturally. So if you guys are curious about more of these locations, please check out the link down in the comments below where I got all this information. So let's talk about the release and set details. First, I'll go over this, and then I'll get into the lore later on in this video. Some fun facts: Shadowmoor contained 301 cards, which contain 80 rare, 80 uncommon, 121 common, and 20 basic land. It is the first set of a so-called mini-block, the second being Eventide. It is also a large expansion released in May, when usually a small expansion is released. Together with the previous Lorwyn block, they formed a 4-set mega-block. So Shadowmoor takes place on the plane of the same name, which is a reflection of Lorwyn, the setting of the previous block. Shadowmoor does not continue any mechanics or themes from Lorwyn and often inverts them. For example, when Lorwyn had a sub-theme involving 1/1 counters, Shadowmoor uses -1, -1 counters instead. When Lorwyn contained only a few multicolored cards and Morningtide none, Shadowmoor contains many multicolored cards. The races native to Lorwyn also appear in Shadowmoor, but some switch color alignment. Additionally, a race of artifact creatures called Scarecrows is introduced. And over here we have one of the cards called Blazethorn Scarecrow, which came out in the Shadowmoor set. So let's talk about the release and set details some more. The strongest theme of Shadowmoor is the usage of hybrid mana, which can be paid with mana of either of 2 colors. The mechanic was first introduced in Ravnica Black, but is heavily expanded in this and the following set, Eventide. Shadowmoor focuses on allied pairs. Every basic land in Shadowmoor is part of a 2-card diptych. The expansion symbol of Shadowmoor is alternatively interpreted as a batwing, a dead leaf, or the jack-o'-lantern lid from the Reaper Keen. The Keen of the Scarecrows. The latter is the official reading. And right here's the symbol, right here. To me, it looks more like a half a batwing more than anything. Let me know what you guys see down in the comments below. So let's talk more about some details. Shadowmoor expands on its hybrid theme with the introduction of monocolored hybrid mana. This mana cost can be paid by either 1 mana of a specified color or by 2 mana of any color. The converted mana cost of these cards is the highest possible. Another new feature was the untap symbol, which is used as a cost, allowing a permanent to be untapped to produce some effect as listed on the cards. The card must be tapped to use that ability, just as cards with a tap must be untapped. This ability appears primarily in white and blue. Right here we have Crackleburr. Here's the hybrid mana, either blue or red. And then there's also the untap symbol right here. So just to showcase a little bit of the cards right there. And I love the artwork too, really cool. Further, the set includes a cycle of lands that have basic land types, despite not being basic lands. To prevent them from being strictly better than basic lands, these enter the battlefield tapped. However, they can also be used for a specific, somewhat weak effect if its controller also controls at least 2 permanents of the appropriate color. I don't have any examples of these, however, I do have an example of one of the new keywords introduced in the set Wither. Let's kind of go over the other ones first, though. Conspire, as you play the spell, you may tap 2 untapped creatures you control that share a color with it. When you do copy it, persist. When this creature is put into the graveyard from play, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to play under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. And then Wither, which is what I'm showcasing here in Hate Flare. This deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters, primarily in red, black, and green. As you can see, I mean, it's red, so it makes sense. And then also here's the untap symbol again. So let's go into the flavor and storyline of Shadowmoor. Lorwyn in Shadowmoor is a remote plane with 2 aspects. While Lorwyn represents day, Shadowmoor is night. I made a video yesterday about Lorwyn, so go check that out if you haven't already. Lorwyn basically is the bright side, like they said before, and then Shadowmoor is night. Lorwyn actually switches to Shadowmoor every 300 years or so, an unnatural event triggered by the Great Aurora, which I talk more about in the previous video. Shadowmoor was once the world of Lorwyn. In fact, in a sense, it still is, but thanks to the Great Aurora, everything's changed, as I mentioned before. Where it was once constantly sunny, now it is always night, steeped in gloom and fog, and with only cold moonlight to light the skies. Once clear waters have turned brackish and chill, the howling wind creaks, the brittle branches of rotting trees. Life, once abundant, either struggles to survive or is twisted into something vicious and cruel. This is not a world of despair, but of oppressive terror and constant death. Lore in Shadowmoor does not stand out in the blind eternities. It resides in a region of dream and aether that obscures it from most planeswalkers. It is also one of the few known planes in the multiverse where humanity has not flourished. The plane is considered to be spark blind. So let's talk about Shadowmoor some more. The former inhabitants of Lorwyn don't recall their previous lives and remember having always lived in Shadowmoor, because every 300 years it changes from Lorwyn to Shadowmoor. So if there's a creature living in Lorwyn and it turns into Shadowmoor, they do not remember anything about Lorwyn. There are, however, a handful of beings who retain their memories. For example, the storyline's latest Great Aurora, Aisling, Bridget Bailey, Marlin, Ona, the Vendilion Clique, Roisin Meanderer, and the Sapling. And here are 2 images of these guys. You have Marlin on the right, and then the Sapling on the left. Let's talk about Shadowmoor some more. I have a couple of cards here. Some inhabitants of Shadowmoor, the Kithkin, and then this is a Kelpie on the right there. So another difference between the 2 planes is that some creatures who are dormant in Lorwyn are actually active in Shadowmoor, while others now hide from sight on the new plane. Orphis, Korrigans, Pukas, Kelpies, Scarecrows, and nightmarish mythical beings that have slumbered beneath Lorwyn's surface have re-emerged in the ambient night. What races have survived the change had been thoroughly altered by a tainted darkness covering Shadowmoor. In particular, the demeanor of each race has taken a toll for the worse. What does that mean? The Kithkin have become withdrawn and distrusting of the other inhabitants of the plane, and the Bogarts are now violent brutes. The Flamekin now call themselves the Cinders, have lost their passion and become hateful shadows of themselves. Giants have lost their intelligence and rely in their basic instincts. The Merrills are spiteful pirates and raiders who lurked in the murky rivers. The Treefolk are warped skeletons of bark and branches, and the playful changelings have become the malicious mimics. So as you can see, we have the theme of bright and awesome and radiant in Lorwyn, and now it's the exact opposite in Shadowmoor, where it's just ugly and creepy creatures set out to kill you, essentially. The elves, in contrast, were one tribe to experience a more positive difference. They became the last remnant of Lorwyn's older idyllic environment. Pressed by hostile conditions, the elves were forced to battle for their very existence. Rather than lording over the plane and oppressing the other species to conform to the values of beauty and grace, the ironic reversal in their situation shifted the elves from arrogance to humbled self-preservation. The only race that remained mostly the same is the Fae, because they are protected by Una's magic, and thus have remained mischievous and unpredictable. And on the right here, I actually have a picture of Una, who is a Fae, and she is a black-blue creature. So let's talk about some creatures and flora of Shadowmoor. I'm not going to list off everything, however, I think this kind of goes to show you what kind of creatures we're dealing with in Shadowmoor. We have the Cinders and Elves and Faes, like I mentioned before, Kelpies. Right here on the right, we actually have a Redcap, and the Redcaps are typically goblins, but stronger versions of them, and more deadly and brutal, which kind of is very it encapsulates what Shadowmoor is all about. Some flora, we have nettlewheat, donglove, briarberries, and apples. There's also in the depths of the waters, we have krakens and leeches and stuff like that. So that's basically the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm curious to know what you guys think about this. Do you want me to talk about more lore videos in the Magic the Gathering's history? And if so, which ones do you want? While you're commenting, don't forget to click the like button on the way down and subscribe too while you're at it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great one. Tutor out.